Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into one of history's most perplexing figures, the Court of St. Germain. He was, or should I say, a brilliant alchemist, a skilled diplomat, a master musician, or something more. Was he, as some claimed, immortal, a saint? The Count of St. Germain burst onto the European stage in the mid-18th century, captivating courts and salons with his charm, with an apparent mastery of countless subjects. He spoke every language that's spoken in Europe, fluently played the piano and the violin with virtuosity, and displayed a uncanny knowledge of history, stemming from first-hand experience. But it wasn't just his talent that made him legendary, it was his claims. He spoke of knowing secrets of immortality, of transmitting pure metal to gold, and having lived for centuries. He even claimed to know Jesus Christ. He was said to be at the wedding in Cana, where the young Jesus turned water into wine. It is even rumored that he received the staff of Moses from one of Moses' grandsons in the time of Cyrus in Babylon. Now let us look at the facts, or at least what we think are the facts. His origins are shrouded in mystery. Some theories suggest he was the illegitimate son of a Transylvanian prince. Others thought that he was Portuguese or even Spanish. No one knows for sure. He appeared in courts of Louis XVI, where he was a favorite and later traveled across Europe, interacting with prominent figures like Madam Pampodour, Voltaire, and even Casanova. He was a master of disguise and intrigued, often disappearing and reappearing under different names. But here is where things get really interesting. People who met him swore he never seemed to age. He spoke of events from past as if he had witnessed them personally. For example, Madame Pampodour, the mistress of Louis XV of France, the elderly Madame Pampodour, was questioning where she met the Count in Venice in 1710, some 50 years ago. When she met the Count again, she was flabbergasted to see that he hadn't aged a single day. So she proceeded to ask him if he was his father that she met in Venice. The Count replied, "No, madam, I myself was living in Venice." The Count replied, "No, madam, I myself was living in Venice at the beginning of the century, where I have the honor to pay you court." Then the elderly Countess replied, "Forgive me, but that is impossible. The Count I knew in those days was at least 45 years old, and you from the outside looks like 45 at present." The Count smiled and said, "Madam, I am very old, but you must have been 100 years old," said Madam Countess. The Count then replied, "That is not impossible. The Count then provided details of their previous meeting and what life was like in Venice 50 years earlier. The Count lived in different places in Europe, including France. He lived in Versailles, Paris, and Chambord. Saint Germain was a well-known figure in the court of King Louis XV during the 18th century. He was often seen at Versailles, where he impressed the nobility with his knowledge of history, chemistry, and music. He supposedly had a laboratory in Chateau de Chambord, where he conducted alchemical experiments. He also warned Louis XVI and Queen Antoinette of the French Rebellion 15 years prior of the war. He lived in London in the 1740s, where he was involved in diplomatic and political activities. He was arrested for espionage, but later released. Some sources suggested he was linked to Freemasonry in England. While in England, he contributed some of his own musical creation, Stanza de U.S.A, an opera at the Haymarket Theatre in London. While in England, Horace Walpole, the Earl of Oxford, also a writer, mentioned the Count in a letter which stated, "Today they seize an odd man who goes by the name of Count St. Germain. He has been here for these 2 years and would not tell anyone who he is or where he comes from. He sings, plays the violin wonderfully, composes. It's mad and it's not very sensible. They call him an Italian, a Spaniard, a Pole. He's somebody that married a great fortune in Mexico and ran away with her jewels. The Prince of Wales has gone very curious, but in vain. He was so great of a musician to not have been famous. The Count is then described as being with extremely black hair and a beard. He also dressed magnificently and have several jewels. Even his shoes were studded with them. The Count was said to live in Russia, St. Petersburg, in 1760s, possibly involved in political intrigues, including the rise of Catherine the Great. It is rumored that he advised her in secret and helped her ascend to the throne. Under her rule, Russia grew larger and recognized as one of the great powers worldwide. In 1779, the Count went to Hamburg, Anatolia, a borough of Hamburg, Germany, and met up with Prince George of Nassau, who had an integral part in secret societies. He showed the prince several of his gems. The prince was impressed with the Count and let him work in a laboratory and supplied him with materials to start the project. They create jewels together. The prince told the Count was the only person he trusted. He told the prince that he was the son of Transylvania, Prince Francis Rokoski, and that he had been 88 years old when he arrived. In Hamburg, the Count was recorded to have died in his residence in his laboratory on the 27th of February 1784. He was buried The next day, in a private grave in Nikolai Church in Eckernfurt. But for me and you, that would be the end of the story. But not for the Count. There have been many recorded sightings and meetings with the Count. Up to this day, the Freemason chose the Count as their representative in 1785. In 1821, the Countess d'Adhémar, a French court official and memoir writer, said she had a conversation with the Count. I have seen Saint Germain again, each time to my surprise. I saw him when the Queen was unalive, and on the eve of the unaliving of the Duke of the Berry. The last time I saw him was in 1820. Each time he looked like a man in his mid-40s. In 1821, the Count would take on a different identity of Albert Van Dam wrote in his memoirs that he met someone that looks like the Count of St. Germain. He called himself Major Fraser, lived alone and have alluded to his family. Moreover, he was lavish with money, though the source of his fortune remained a mystery to everyone. He possesses marvelous knowledge of all countries in Europe, of all periods. His memory was absolutely incredible, and curiously enough to acquire his learning from elsewhere than from books. Major Fraser would then disappear without a trace, never to be seen or heard from again. In 1870, Napoleon was interested in the undying Count. He would put a commission together to collect information about him. The commission was staged at the Hotel de Ville. Just 1 year later, a mysterious fire would break out, ruin all information regarding the Count. In later years, many other people would come forward and claim to have met the Count. Everyone who came in contact with this man realized he was not normal. Some thought he was a liar, and others thought he was an extraordinary man and lived many lifetimes. But he did not stay in Europe. He made his way across the Atlantic to America, a mysterious figure of announced individual who delivered a compelling speech during the Continental Congress, motivating the delegates to the Declaration. Some speechwriter, this figure was Saint Germain, the Count. Certain occult claim that Saint Germain designed the Great Seal of the United States. The Count is also documented to be in Philadelphia at the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, appearing after the door had been closed, and gave all the secret Masonic greetings, compelling that galvanized the assembly into signing and then disappear as mysteriously as he arrived. In 1902, in New Orleans, a man named Jacques Saint Germain moved into the French quarters. He claimed to be the direct descendant of Count Germain. He spoke all the same languages, played the same instruments, and told the same stories of centuries worth of traveled around the world. He looked just like the Count. He looked around 45 years old. Jacques vanished overnight after a woman leaped over his balcony, never to be seen again. Who was the Count, and did he really die? Why people still have continued to see the Count, and why does his name appear in records after his passing? Is this man truly an immortal, emerging each century? He is by far the most mysterious person of all time.